testify not to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Mr. Ricker, would you state your name for the record, please?
Wilbur Ricker,
And your address?
box 242, Blueville, Maine, 04614.
Mr. Ricker, or may I call you Bill, how old are you? How old are you?
Almost 77. I'm 76 now.
Okay, and for most of your adult life, how were you employed?
Most of my adult life I was employed as an investigator in the, what's now the Fire Marshal's office. It used to be the Sheriff's Commissioner's office. And I was employed as a law enforcement officer sometime before that. And I still carry a badge in my pocket today, deputy.
How long were you an investigator with the Fire Marshal's office or its predecessor?
From December 15th, 1942, February 15th, 1984.
And in 1984, did you retire?
I did.
Now, what were your duties as an investigator with the Fire Marshal's office between 1942 and 1984?
Investigate fires. When I started, we had several duties. We investigated fires with licensed dancers and circuses and carnivals and motion pictures and enforced the laws on the flammables and explosives. And then, after fighting with them over the years, they finally split it into two divisions. They have the inspectors now that work on that, and the investigators mainly on the fires and origins.
Now, is it safe to say that for about 42 years then you were involved in investigating fires and their origins?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what kind of training did you have in general terms?
It was pretty much, at those days they had no formal training. It was pretty much experience and working with other people, like Mr. Flynn was our chief at that time, and then they had a gentleman that came in with the National Board of Fire Underwriters that had Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. We worked with those, and we attended different seminars for different lengths of time and brought people in from other states with experience.
Okay, so have you had specialized training in fire investigation over the years?
Oh, not. It's pretty hard for me to answer that. I mean it. I have not attended any formal courses for it, such as college and so forth, not for the fire investigation. No, I've had general investigation training through, as I say, these different seminars and instructors. I've been to the Criminal Justice Academy for little short courses on different things after they started that recently.
Over these 40 years, some odd, that you investigated fires, could you give us any kind of estimate of how many fires you've investigated?
I wouldn't dare to estimate it. I've always answered them. It's in the thousands. That's all I know. I've never checked the files. So.
And have you testified as an expert witness in criminal prosecutions for the state of Maine? Can you give us any idea about how many times you qualified as an expert under those circumstances?
No, it would be hundreds, because some years it might be 10 or 12 a year. Sometimes it would only be 3 or 4. But over that period of time, it's a lot of them.
Okay. In 1981, you were still employed as an investigator with the Fire Marshal's office?
That's correct.
I'd like to call your attention to February 18th, 1981. Did you have occasion to investigate a fire in Lucerne, Maine, or to at least learn of a fire in Lucerne, Maine that took place on February 18th, 1981?
I was called to one and made a preliminary investigation on that day.
Okay, can you tell me what you remember about your initial involvement? I want to start at the beginning of what you remember about that Lucerne fire in February 1981.
You want me to start from when I received the call?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, sometime in the early morning hours, after 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, I received a telephone call at my home. And I believe, I don't remember for sure who called me, but it was from at the directions of Norm Heron, the fire chief, and said he had a fire at Lucerne and requested my presence as soon as possible. And I started to pick up, get things together and get both eyes open, and the telephone rang again, and I thought it would be another call. Rather than have my wife answer it, I answered that, and that was a call from my boss, Mr. Bishop Augusta, And he told me that he wanted me to come to Bangor immediately because they had a fatal fire with at least 2 dead and wanted me to report up here. So I had to come right by Lucerne, and I went in there and found Norm Heron and his firemen at the scene.
Now let me interrupt you there.
Sure.
What had Norman Heron told you at the time that he called you, or that you got the phone call?
None objects on hearsay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I don't recall that Norman Heron, as I said, I'm not sure he's the one that called me. I think it could have been in his directions. And all I know, as I recall it, all I had was information. There was a fire in Lucerne and he wanted me. And I've worked with Norm over the years, and I knew when he called me, he wanted me.
Now, were you given directions to the fire?
I imagine so. I can't recall, but I went right to it. I'm very familiar with the place. I have an idea that he probably did tell me, but...
Okay. When you arrived at the fire scene, could you start telling me what you remember from that time?
As I drove up the scene, as I saw, there was fire equipment, there were several men. First thing I can remember is Norman coming over to me.
I'm going to object. How about a standing objection for anything that he's been told by anybody else in the entire proceedings?
All right. That's noted. And I would, in fact, say that, you know, if you want to reserve all objections to hearsay or to substance, that will be fine with me.
Okay, that would make it much more smooth.
Okay.
That'd be fine.
I don't remember in what order, but I do know that he told me that he was glad I was there, and he showed me 2 5-gallon gas cans, and I noticed that the building was burnt pretty well, that the walls were laying out, and as I said, I'm not too clear, but the fireman was still putting some water around it.
Okay, let me interrupt you there. Was the fire actively burning at that point?
Oh yes, the fireman was still there. As I actively burning, it was not entirely extinguished, that's right.
Okay, but was the structure really fully involved with flames at the moment you
No,
arrived?
there was no more structural burning, I don't think, took place after I got there, what I call structural burning. But after a fire, there's hot spots that they stay around and cool off, and there was a small garage quite close that they were, of course, concerned with catching, and Scott did a little fireman there. I didn't really pay that much attention because I was trying to find out what I could and follow my boss' instructions to get the bang off of fatal fires. And Norman pointed out that he'd seen somebody run from the scene and showed me where. And I remember a little clearer on that because there was snow on the ground. Not deep snow, but plenty enough for tracking purposes. And he showed me a set of tracks leading, which would be almost east, I believe, in compass direction, southeast, beyond the building. Headed out through the woods, and it was tracked up a little at first, and then he pointed where he'd seen this subject run, and I'll go. And I went along looking at the tracks, and I had a pair of Herman Survivor's boots that were issued by the state, and I recall clearly of standing to the side and make my print and look at that. I won't say they were the same, but they were the same type of blood threads. I'm trying just to get an idea of the size, and I couldn't tell in the snow, but I thought it was within reason. I wear a 9, I thought, well, it's got to be that, maybe an 8 or 8.5 or a 9. It's right in that class anyway. And there was a deputy sheriff, whether he got there before me or not, but I know he arrived, named Alto, who I'd known a long while, worked down there.
Excuse me?
Alto.
Okay.
That's his last name. And I explained to him that I had to get to Bangor. You know, I was up against him. And the boss had sent me up here, and I knew I had fatal fires, and hey, we got a burnt building with a fellow running from it, and to be sure, it needed investigation, and it looked bad to me, but priorities you had to take.
Now, let me, I don't, excuse me for a second, but so that I don't miss this point.
So,
First of all, did you follow the tracks that Mr. Heron indicated to you that night?
I did. I was beyond where the firemen had shuffled around. I originally followed the tracks considerable distance before I turned them over to Elmer, that's right.
Okay. How far did you follow them, and was it a straight path, and did it
There was
turn?
practically a straight pass right beyond the building, right beyond that garage, right straight down. It's kind of a ridge. And as I,
Okay, now wait a second, were the tracks along the top of the ridge, or were they down?
no, they were following, as I recall, they were more or less like a little horseback. In other words, I don't remember so much the ground on the right, but on my left it sloped off. Because when I came back, I went down over that side a little bit, and I remember that because the bathroom hadn't been working, and they'd been going out there using it for the toilet, and I see where those tracks had just gone down to where they'd been and come back, so I'm pretty clear on that one.
So do I understand you correctly that you went along the top of what you referred as the horseback?
That's right, on the way out on the track, that's right.
Okay, and at any point, did the track go straight, or did it turn, or what did it do?
At the time I left it, it was either a rock or a mountain of snow. I remember I'd say it almost like a table. And it come to that and it turned left, and I went just far enough to see it didn't go around it, but it kept heading off to my left, which would be, in my opinion, south towards the main road.
Okay, so you followed it until it turned left?
That's correct.
Could you give me any estimate of the distance?
Pretty hard after all these years, but I would say it definitely wasn't over the length of a football field. It could have been anywhere from 150 to 200 yards, I would say. I mean, I'm sorry, 150 to 200 feet to 50 in that area. But I just don't have a clear enough reference on that.
Okay, now, was there enough snow so that there were clear tracks?
Very clear, right.
And you said that the boot was like your Herman
It
Survivors.
was the same type. I can't remember whether it was the same tread or not, but it did have quite deep.
Okay, that's a rubber treaded boot?
I would expect so, but I don't know.
Okay, so they were boots, they were tracks with horizontal treads on them?
Objection. That's leading.
Well, I'm just trying to get you...
They were a broken type lug,
Right.
and they come, like the heel usually comes around that way and bad up the front, but I just know they were lug type,
Okay.
and they were similar to mine, if not the same.
And could you explain a little bit better what you mean by a lug type tread?
Lug type?
Yeah.
Well, I mean...
Was that LUG?
Like
lug?
a snow tire on a car instead of a summer tire, I think so.
Okay.
Never think to describe it.
Okay, and were both footprints booted, or was there anything odd about these tracks you were following?
Not that I saw this, no.
Okay. Are you clear in your mind that there were two boot prints, both a left and a right boot impression?
I'm very sure.
Now, who was with you? Was there just one set of prints that you were following, or were there more?
That's right. Apparently somebody had gone out of the ways, I would say, and looked at them. You know, and the firemen had been around the vicinity of the building. But by the time I got, as I recall it, well, it might have been 50, 60, 70 feet down away, there was no other tracks. Whoever had gone out of the ways had left it.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned that there was some place where there was an outdoor latrine or something. You said that you came across
Well,
it
the
on
whole
the way
outdoors
back.
was a tree, different places.
Okay, and this was in the immediate vicinity of the building itself?
Yes, it was when I came back from following the tracks. Instead of coming back the way I came, I didn't want to track it up anymore anyway. I took a turn down kind of on the side hill and come back up to the house, just to see if somebody had circled in or come in before they left. And the only tracks that I found were just back and forth from these locations of where they'd used it to the house, where they'd gone out and back in several different places.
Now, when you came back below the house, besides tracks leading to and from that latrine area, did you find any other tracks leading into or out of the vicinity of the building?
No, I didn't. Any that I found was double, where they'd gone out and taken their own tracks back, but in different locations. I'd say probably maybe 6 or 8 places. And some were fairly new, and some had been made in the snow, so they were old.
Okay. Now, about what time did you arrive at this fire?
I remember it was just getting light enough so you could use daylight, and it was somewhere around that time of year. I believe it was about pretty close to 6, between 5:30 and 6. I think it was nearer 6. That's my report. I think I did.
Okay.
5:50.
This is a good point for me to ask you also. What have you reviewed in terms of preparing to come here and testify today? Have you reviewed any documents at all?
Yes, I have. I haven't looked at many lately. I did pick up a copy of my file at Augusta, and it's over there sometime before Christmas, and looked that over, and I had some material that you sent me, which was a lot of it was repeating of what I had in some of the adjusters' pictures and something like that. But I haven't looked at those for a long while.
Okay. Now, did you say that around Christmas time you had picked up your file in
It
Augusta?
was prior to Christmas. I don't remember the date offhand, but...
What do you refer to as your file? What were you?
Well, I refer to the fire marshal's file that was in the office. They had my report and Jameson's reports and some lab reports and my photos that I took with my Polaroid camera.
Okay. We might go off the record for a moment and mark some exhibits. Okay. Bill, we're back on the record after marking some exhibits. I'd like you said you reviewed the fire marshal's file, your file at the fire marshal's office.
Right.
I'd like to show you what has been marked as Wilbur Ricker Deposition Exhibit Number 1 and ask if you can tell me what that is.
This is the original first page that we made out on the scene, and as I said before, it was a brief stop up there. And this just simply tells the information that I had at the town, the time that the fire was reported to have occurred, and my time of arrival there, which I see is 5:50 on here, but it's in the estimate I give you. And the condition was clear at that time, and it was at night, residential, rural. And you want me to read the short paragraph?
No, at this point, I might go back over these, but I'm trying to establish what it is that you've refreshed your memory with.
It's just the first very preliminary to go into the office. It set a file number up, which I assigned myself, and it's checked off as incendiary, and recommended the case be check
Okay,
off.
and you made out this first page on the immediately after visiting the scene on the 18th of
That's my
February?
recollection that I did.
Okay,
yes.
was it your normal habit, or what?
Yes, what we tried to do was send the first page in within the hours, if we could, of the first mail, so that the office would know that we were on the fire, and if they got any telephone calls, they'd know that they could answer, well, we've got a man working on it, because like this one, you run into a lot of fires, and sometimes you didn't get back. You had to use your own priorities, or whether you went back the next day or the next hour, or if you had another important one in between, which is, of course, was what happened here.
And did you routinely note important details of the investigation when you would make out these forms?
No, just about what's on this. Especially if it was a very brief one like this. If it spent all day on it, you might have more on it. But on looking at this, I would say, I know, in fact, that this one was typed over by somebody in the office from a written report of mine, which I don't have, because I see they printed my name down here with a typewriter, and it's checked off that way.
Okay.
My typewriter, I think, on those, you can see the difference in the keys. They give me an old one to work with.
Okay. Let me show you what's been marked as Wilbur Ricker Deposition Exhibit Number 2 and ask if you to tell me what that is.
Well, number 2 was the investigation report supplement that I was started to do following when I got a chance to get back on the scene.
And we'll go into the details of that later, but that also was part of the file that you reviewed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And there's two, in fact, there's 2 pages of that, and that I did type myself at some later date. I can even see the difference in the typewriter keys.
Okay. And you also reviewed this before testifying here today?
Yes, well, I've had a copy of this for some time anyway.
Okay. Let me show you what's been marked as Deposition Exhibit Number 3. Ask you to tell me what that is.
Number 3 was done by Alan Jameson, who was the state trooper that worked with me. And I don't know, of course, what date he did it, he doesn't have, but I did a diagram, and apparently he did his own, and I would say this is dated on March 2nd. And what he's got on there, right, I might have helped him, he might have take notes while I was doing my diagram, but that's all I could do. I never saw this before, but I did this now.
Okay. Now, that was part of the fire marshal's file?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right. And you hadn't seen that before you were at the fire marshal's
Not
office
that I
on
recall,
Christmas?
no. I was a little surprised because I'm trying to figure out what's this. It isn't my writing, and it's on one of our headlines, and not the state police, but we did work together, and he used my phone, so.
Okay, let me ask you this. What was the relationship between you and Trooper Jameson on this particular investigation?
Well, I hope good. We always had.
No,
We
but were
worked
you
together
part-
about 5 years. It's funny.
Yeah, but were you just friends, or were you part of a team for official purposes, or what was your official relationship?
At that time, they had, I think it was 4 state troopers assigned to our office, and after we split up to the investigations and fires were getting ahead of us, we tried to work a team concept. In other words, I'd go in and work on the origin, and if I got another fire and there was investigative and interviews to do, they would do that, and I'd go check the next fire. And if they got caught up, we'd work together a lot of scenes. But that was the idea, was to cover them all, and I think anybody with experience investigating knows when you leave something, go back to it, you're disadvantaged. You like, if it's good, you like to stay with it.
You and Trooper Jameson were a team investigating this fire in Lucerne?
That's right. He, not when I originally went, but he joined me up here to Bangor on the other fire and stayed with me.
Okay. Let me show you a series of photographs that are marked Deposition Exhibits 4 through 14, and just ask you to quickly see if, in general, you recognize them, and let me ask you what they are, without going into any specific...
They are. Well, you haven't got any numbers on them. They're all... Yeah, are they numbered right through? Or?
Yeah, if you just see that that's the photo file.
Take them in order here. Oh, yeah, this is the first picture. Yeah, this is a...
I'd rather not do any specific picture right
Okay.
now. I just want to know whether those all the photographs that were in the fire marshal's file?
That's right. And I believe they're all I took
Okay.
myself. There's
Right.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14.
And you took all those photographs personally?
I took them all, yeah.
Okay, and it's your writing that's on the back of those photographs?
That is right.
Okay.
And
Now,
and the card that's in with them was my writing.
okay, and we will, this hasn't been marked, but we will mark this as number
Okay.
17.
Yep.
Okay. Now, was there anything else that was in that fire marshal's file that you reviewed before testifying here today?
There was a report of Detective Jameson had written that I looked over. It was more of a, yes, it was a report and a log, both combined, I would call it. And it was, I can't enumerate all of them that was in there. There was correspondence, of course, put in the file from the adjusters working on the fire. The requests at different times for parts of the file, copies or information, I think. Those things I passed over. I didn't pay. I was just looking for something to refresh my memory, really. I wanted to be sure I was right on. And there was some lab reports come back that I didn't know.
Okay. So in terms of what we are looking at here today and what comprises the fire marshal's file, was there any investigation material besides Trooper Jameson's log that is not here today?
I don't recall any investigation. You mean done by the state police or
No,
by the
what I
agency?
mean is materials that would be, factual materials that might be pertinent to your opinions.
The chemist report that was done, I know was on there. The one from the state police technicians here,
Okay, yeah,
with the where he checked for fingerprints.
right. And
Took the samples.
it's your understanding that no fingerprints were found?
That's right. I was present when that was done.
Okay.
I could have told him before he started he wouldn't get me because when you got to photograph him to get him on that stuff. You can't lift him. If it's been around 5 minutes, I'm sure.
Okay, now do you have, having refreshed your memory with these items, would you say you have a clear recollection of what you're testifying here today?
I believe there's a few points that I filled myself in the other day, mostly on times and dates. My recollection's right.
Okay. Now, going back to that first visit to the scene on the 18th of February in 1981, after you followed the tracks, after you came back around on the low side of the horseback and noted the latrine area, what did you do next?
I don't recall doing much of anything else except going back to Mount Heron. Oh, I'm sorry, I did. I got the deputy sheriff. It showed up. Whether he'd been there right along and busy, I don't know. Whether I sent him before I made the trip back or after, I'm not sure. But I asked him, being an Hancock County deputy, if he would take my place and follow those tracks and see what he could do with them because I had to go to Bangor. And I asked the fire chief.
Excuse me, what was the name of that deputy sheriff?
Alto is his last name. I should know his first name. I've worked with him for years.
Was it Elmer Alto?
Elmer Alto, sure. Yeah, I noticed the report here. They had it spelled some other way, but it was Alto, A-L-T-O. So.
And
he lived right down the road. He was assistant fire chief and a deputy for years. So.
And once again, what did you ask him to do?
I asked him if he where I had to go to Bangor, would he continue on those tracks and see if he could find where they led to or get any information from me.
Okay. And did you do anything else that was of any significance at that time?
No, I don't recall, except looking around in general, noticing that the walls had fallen out of the building
Any other observations of the fire scene at that first night that are important from your point of view?
I don't recall anything else that night except seeing the general debris, the way the building had opened up and fell right out with the sides in all directions. And of course the gasoline cans that he showed me, I checked and I asked him if he would take care of those because I didn't want to take them with me and I'd pick them up and be back whenever I could. And I asked him when the fire was cleaned up to leave the scene alone and I'd come back and do what I could.
So you left the gas cans with Norman when you went to Bangor?
That's right. I was a little hazy on that till I found the report. That's where I picked it up. There's an explanation. My daily reports that I made out every day, I destroyed after the statute of limitations ran out on arson. And when I trekked Augusta, which I really wanted to get, they'd thrown their copies away after 5 years. We had a book like it, we had both. And I thought if I could get those, I'd be absolutely sure, because I'd have just like a diary of my day's work. And they're gone, so it's outside of these reports, I'm licked that way.
Okay, now, on deposition exhibit number 1, I noticed that at the bottom of the exhibit you've checked incendiary.
Yes, I did. There's blocks that we check off there before it goes in. Incendiary, yes, no, or unknown. I put yes on it.
Okay, what is in layman's terms, what does that mean, incendiary?
Well, there's been some discussion in court. I don't use it in court anymore. My interpretation is that when you say incendiary fire, you mean an intentional humanly set fire.
Okay. Now, in other
rather than a human element fire.
And you made out this deposition exhibit number 1 before you returned to the scene on the 24th or before you returned to the scene. Strike that. How many times did you come back to that scene?
That's why I'd like my dailies. I can tell you the ones I verified and the ones I remember. I came back the same night when I got through up here, which I'd forgotten about.
And you got through up here in Bangor? After
we got clearing the scene in Bangor. Jameson was with me. We went down, and it was too dark to really see much. And I got the cans from Norman.
Okay, so this is again on the 18th at
right. And it was I think it was the same night we found a car up in there parked at the scene. And we asked identification, and the fellow said his name was Jameson, which I remember that because it struck me kind of funny. And we checked it out, and it was another fireman from another department who had to back him up, and he brought his wife down and look at the scene. And another night that I went down by, it was too dark, and I found an automobile down there that I did turn the information between us over to the state police after we found the body, and that belonged to the lady friend, I guess. And it was a Buick and the plate number. I just turned that over to him. And I can't remember being down there any other time. I wasn't there any daylight where I could do anything anyway, but I was going back and forth by, and I could have stopped it for something.
But did you make another visit when you did do a daylight investigation?
Oh yes, on the 24th is when the time we got clear. We were terribly busy. We did legwork for this one in Bangor. We went to Jonesport for information on the suspect to help them out, and there was fires in Ellsworth. Just crazy.
Yeah. If I understand you correctly, then deposition exhibit number 1, that first sheet from the fire, was dictated or written by you or somehow made from your notes, and those notes were made after the 18th but before the 24th?
Yeah.
Okay. If that's your understanding?
That's right. I was down there, my recollection, I was down there 3 times.
Okay.
The first day when I got the gas cans, it was dark. Another night when at least one more when I couldn't do anything because of darkness. And I picked the cans up that one.
Now,
The time I saw the other vehicle. I think it was 3, that's all I recall.
now, you have checked incendiary here on deposition exhibit number 1, which you said meant an intentional human origin.
Right.
Was it your opinion as of that first night that you went to that fire that you were dealing with a fire that was set by a person?
Well, that was my recommendation, opinion at that time, certainly.
Okay. That first night, what was that opinion based upon?
Well, it was based on what I saw on the scene where the building opened up and the sides fell out.
Okay, no.
It indicates a terrible fuel load in the building. Then I took into consideration the gas can sitting outside, somebody running from the scene of a burning building. Had no other conclusion at that time. Usually the fire department comes, they run to them, they don't run away from them.
Objection.
Could you tell me a little bit more about why the walls falling out is an indication of a considerable fast-burning fuel load inside the building?
Well, number one, fires burn up very rapidly. The heat rises quicker than anything else. And if you've got a slope, like a short circuit in the wall, the building will start and burn that way, and it'll work over this way. It may get enough heat to flash ahead according to construction, but you'll burn up something pretty clean before you get to the start. If you've got a heavy fuel load in the building, it could be anything that's terribly inflammable, it'll make an awful hot fire. It sets it all over, and especially up high, and goes right out through the roof, and it burns off your collar beams, we call them, that go across, and the supports, so that your walls just drop out like that. It's a very common tool that we use on investigation to tell, number one, whether there was anything else in the building besides ordinary construction.
Now, when you returned that other time, and you said you found the second time, and you found that there was a car parked there and whatnot, did you make any observations at that time which added anything to what you knew after the first?
Not that I called, because it wasn't light enough to go into any more detail to hunt around it, so I just waited till we could get back. You understand, we had no reports of anyone missing. We had no reasons to think it was anything but another one of the fires that we had. And here we had fatals that we were working on.
In other words, the fatal fire you were working on was the fire in Bangor that same night?
That's right. I'm not too sure there wasn't another one. That's why I'd like my daily reports, because I know that what few of us we had, and it was a terrible busy time. They always come in bunches like anything else.
Okay. Now, then you returned, as I understand it, on February 24th for a daylight inspection.
That's right. We finally picked a day that Ellen didn't. I think I had to go to court in between that period too, or one of us did. And that was the day that we were going to get together and go up and wrap this thing up. Get daylight, look at our reports, and go from there.
Okay. What time did you arrive there on the 24th, to the best of your recollection?
Well, as I recall, it was a little while before noon. Because we met in Ellsworth, I think, and talked it over, and I think we made some telephone calls and tried to get a hold of Alto to get his report and see what he found out. And then we drove up.
Okay, now, we being yourself
Alan
and
and I, just that's right.
Trooper Jameson being Alan?
Jameson, yeah.
Okay, and when you arrived, could you tell us, I'm just giving you your report because I'm going to question you on it in a minute, but can you tell us what you did and what you observed?
Well, I certainly would be the first chance that I had to get the dimensions of the building, which we would for any report, general outline of it. And I wasn't roughly familiar with the building because I had been there with the chief on what was considered an accidental fire prior to this on a partial loss, so I was partly familiar with it. But we'd draw that out and then begin to photograph, usually around the area, and just hunt for anything that might help us on the investigation around the outside or the inside or anywhere in the building. And that was what we were starting to do. I remember I found if you're familiar, of course, with the combination doors, they have a hydraulic opener, and there's a little piece slides on it. You can leave it, lock it, and leave it open if you're going in and out there. And several times I found those where they had left that open for some reason or other when they set a fire up. It couldn't be 2 or 3 reasons. And I found that out in front, were locked, open. And there's no way it could do it itself. It had to be done before we do it in the fire.
You're talking about one of these metal devices that you put on screen or storm doors?
It's just like a shock absorber, only when you pull it out, you slip a piece over and it'll hold it open. So you can, like you do if you're lugging your groceries in the house and you get your hands full, and you go and make 2 or 3 trips, you don't want to try to open the door.
And you're saying you found that at the scene of this fire?
It was laying out with the steps, open. Out. The door had melted, the little door that was just laying there.
Locked in the open position?
In the open position, that's right.
Anything else that you noted on the 24th?
Oh, there was quite a few things.
Could you tell us?
The next thing that I was curious about when I found that was, well, what about the inside door? So I went over to look for the hinges, because when the building burns, as a rule, they don't change. They're either open or closed. You know, we look for the hardware locks, tell the building locked or open. And while I was, I think it's the next thing I did, I was down there right in that corner looking for those hinges when I moving stuff, trying to hunt right close there, when I found what I thought first was a dog in the fire. And I said to Alan, I said, do we have any reports of a dog in this house? And he turned to me and he said, well, if it's a dog, he's got a human head or a skull on this end. And then I made it out. It was right there, and the head was almost under my feet when it was wet.
So, right after finding the door device locked in the open position while you were looking for the hinges, you found a dead human body?
That's right.
What did you do next?
And I immediately talked with Alan. I said, look, we got problems. We don't want TV reporters. We don't want a crowd here. I said, let's stay off the radio. You take my car. I was in uniform, had my car that day. I said, you take my car and go down to Norm's house, which is just down the road, and get the telephone. And I'll stay here and watch the scene and take my pictures.
Now, could you describe how the body was lying or where it was and how much debris there was on it? Just give me as much detail as you can.
Well, they had a door stool come into that sun porch on the front of the building. And the body was right near where the door swung, with the head laying at a little bit of an angle off here, face down. And we measured it. I think Alan's report showed so it was less than 5, 6, 7, 8 inches or something right from this corner, this sill, laying face down, back that way.
Now, let me call your attention to the last page of deposition exhibit number 2.
Yeah.
Okay, is that a sketch?
Yeah, that's a sketch of where it was. It doesn't show the doorway there, like I think Alan done one, he had that on it.
Now, let me show you deposition exhibit number 3. Does this show it more clearly?
Yes, it's the same, I think you'll agree, it's the same angle and the same thing, and he's got it marked here. What do you get down there? Am I right? Yeah, 8 inches from the wall area to the skull, and it was just, I think it was a little nearer this corner than he's got it. I think it was more like mine is there, almost. Here's the doorway. It was right close, right there, right where I was looking for the hinges there. But it's pretty much the same thing, yeah. I mean,
How much-
He's got the doorstop mark, which I didn't have. It was laying off here with this door open. And I don't know why he got them separate, because they should be open the same place, same frame, but one opened this way and the other one opened in.
How much debris was on top of the body?
Not a whole lot of ashes, but there was different kind of metalwork that I don't know just where all the come. I didn't pay much that attention. It was like pieces of pipe, of wire and a trim or something that hadn't burnt. And I know I was throwing some of, I just tossed some of it back to get down in where I want to go for the hinges. And as I turned, I saw what later turned out to be part of the leg, and I thought it was
Did you have your dog with you?
No,
Okay.
no.
Was there any, had the body been disturbed at all at
There
that
was a
time?
place, it looked to me as though an animal or a dog had pulled the knee, the back of the leg up a little bit, and that's what I saw first. It just didn't look right.
How many times in your day as a fire marshal have you had occasion to investigate fires in which there were fatalities? Okay, off the record.
Michael,
Okay, Bill, we're back on the record.
Okay.
One thing I want to qualify is that when you were identifying the photographs, I might have misspoke and said there were 14 photographs. In fact,
No, there isn't.
no, right. How many of them are there? Well, are there
It's 4 to 14 inclusive, I believe.
11?
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
That's why I was trying to find 1, 2, and 3. Let's see where that started.
okay. Now, I was asking you whether you had investigated other fatal fires in which people had died, besides this one as a fire marshal.
So, yeah.
And you've had occasion to see the condition that bodies are in after being in fires.
Too many of them, right?
Can you tell us about how many you've seen?
I've tried not to even think about it, but they started from 42 up to 84.
Okay.
And about every one of them that was fatal in Hancock, Washington, Waldo counties, and a lot of other places in the state. So,
Okay. Now, did you have the occasion to examine the body that was found in Lucerne on the 24th of February in 1981?
I did. I stayed right there until it was removed. I helped remove it.
Okay. Now, was there anything significant that you noted about the condition of that body?
Well, yes, it was. It seemed to me that
well, I'm going to object. I'd rather have standing objections, but let's see if we can qualify him for what you evidently want him to say.
Well, first of all, if you would tell me what you observed about this body.
I observed that he was burnt right into the. I hate to go through that.
I can go out.
Okay.
I've already told Michael that
But
I will go out if you.
I really think you might be more comfortable, and that's it would make me feel comfortable.
Well,
Yeah, okay. And I'd just like the record to reflect that he's speaking to Mrs. Cochran and feels more comfortable in testifying if she's not present.
okay.
Yeah, sometimes I think I know better for people and they know themselves. Sometimes I really do. Been through some of these myself.
Okay, I was asking you what you observed.
Yeah, I observed this body was terribly burnt, and there was no signs of any of the clothing left on it at all, and it was into the meat, right down through it. So, and on the head, the back of the skull was even burned away where it was face down. And a lot of times, if I can make a comparison, you can see the lines of the skull, and maybe pieces will break out on it, but this was really quite bad. And as I say, when they moved it, I didn't look so close till afterward, but you want me to say when it was finally moved, what I found?
Yes.
After it was picked up in the scene, it was very clear to me that this body was on the floor prior to the fire because it was all clean. Almost, there was some square tile stuff that was on a whitish buff color, and there was broken glass laying in it with no sign of fire at all. So I observed this at the time.
So are you telling me that there was unburned flooring and broken glass
It wasn't
under the
even,
body?
it's not uncommon to find that, no matter what the fire. If you had a fire here and you picked one of the plant pot covers up afterwards, you'd find a perfect round circle, probably this little heat got in, you pick it out. It's a thing we've always used because we know whether somebody disturbed stuff after a fire. If we're not there, you can tell from the minute, and even where it isn't burned, if there'd be a blot of smoke, you can tell, well, somebody's moved this, there'll be the mark of the paper that should be here, and the paper's over there. So the same idea. And that was quite normal to find that. But it looked to me like altogether too much heat for a one-story building and that burning down. If it had been a cellar and the body had gone down in, and you had like a forge or a shop of red coals that stayed there, and he was in it, right, it would practically, you would find them all right, but it would be worse. But this was quite bad for that. It struck me there had to be more than that torch burning down on it to do it.
Okay, well, let me backtrack a little through this. Do bodies normally burn, in your experience, your observation, do they normally burn the way this one burnt?
Well, you got to go back and find out what happened. You find them that way, but an ordinary structure fire, when a fireman responds, they're usually not that bad, no.
Okay, well, do you have any opinion as to whether or not there was some sort of accelerant or fuel poured directly on the body, which we'll call Michael Cochran's body?
Objection.
Well, okay, the body that you found on February 24th, 1981.
It would appear to me that there was more heat than there should have been from the building burner. Yes, it could have been any type of accelerant on it.
Objection is not responsive.
Okay, well, I was asking you did you have any opinion as to whether or not any fuel or accelerant, first of all, what is accelerant?
Well, the accelerant is anything that burns rapidly and creates more heat above the ordinary material you'd expect to find there.
Well, for instance...
It's usually referred to as a liquid like gasoline, kerosene, fuel, oil, alcohol, but actually an accelerant could be enough waste paper that was stored somewhere. It would be an accelerant to cause a fire.
Okay. Well, do you have an opinion, and this is kind of simply a preliminary yes or no answer, as to whether or not an accelerant was used to light this body directly on fire?
It looks so good. I would be suspicious of it. That's the best I can say from what I saw. Yeah.
Okay. And what is your opinion? Do you believe that it's likely or unlikely or what? How would you qualify your
Objection.
opinion?
Go ahead and answer the question.
But basing it on everything I know about it, I think it's more likely than it was.
More likely than what?
That there was something added to the body to cause that amount of damage. More than the other.
Well, in layman's terms, are you saying that you think that it's likely that someone poured some gasoline on this body, or?
Objection.
I'm just trying to get you to say, what it is you do believe.
Yeah, well, actually, I do believe it, yes. What I'm trying to say is there's several reasons for me believing it.
Okay, could you now tell us once more, and I realize you've been through this, but tell us, I think in one fashion, organized fashion, why you believe that.
Because of the extent of the burns compared to others, and the known presence of the material being readily available, and in fact somebody run.
Okay, now by the known presence of something, you mean the gas cans outside?
Yeah.
Okay, and now in terms of the condition of this body? I mean, you told me you've seen too many dead bodies in fires.
I've seen all the others.
Right. I was wondering whether you could tell me anything more about how this one compared. What was different about it, or what was different about it than one would usually expect a body that had not fallen into, been packed in hot coals, or not had accelerant poured directly on it.
From the ones I've seen,
Objection again, same basis. Go ahead.
some of them I've known that it was poured on them. And it compares more to those than those that were just burnt the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many cases have you had where you've known that was accelerant poured directly on the body?
Quite a few of them. I can name one right off quick. There was the molasses ponds there, where they threw the 4 gallons of gasoline and poured the water with the chainsaw.
And do I understand you that this resembled those cases?
More of that class, that's right.
Okay. Now,
I'm not saying there was 5 gallons poured on that one. I don't mean that.
now you said that there was a way that this could sometimes happen. This condition of a body could happen, say, if it fell into a cellar, I think you were saying, and it was packed with burning material over it as well.
If it falls in to your burning pile of embers, and they don't extinguish it, that gets hot enough to melt iron stoves.
Do you
You
think
can
that,
imagine what it does. And there's no comparison to one when it's up there, because air cools as well as everything else.
do you believe that was responsible for the condition of the body you found in Lucerne?
No, because this was not in the cellar. It was on the floor that wasn't burned under it. And if it had been a long-term fire, it should have burnt under the floor more. You know, say the fire department didn't come and that burnt them on it. That floor would have been clean under it, would have eaten underneath after a while. And that makes quite a difference in what the fire, whether it's extinguished or not. But when they lay in that pile of coals, it does just like the old-fashioned blacksmith forge they used to have, where they blew the air in, turned the crank, have the charcoal, and melted iron. And it will actually melt iron. It takes 3,000 degrees. In a house fire, it usually doesn't run over 12. Less than 2,000, 12, 1,500.
So, what else did you observe on the 24th after, in your investigation?
When I simply found the body, of course I stopped there and St. Jameson as I testified. And then I started to go around the building to do a little checking. And when I got on the back side, I found maybe Mrs. Cochran may want to come back if they're off the.
Why don't we go off the record for a moment? Bill, I'm going to show you, now we're back on the record. This may be as good a time as any to show you what's been marked as deposition exhibits number 15 and 16.
Right.
And can you identify those, here you are, maybe you want to see these. This is number
That's no one number.
15.
Oh, I see.
This is number 16. Can you tell us, I'm just going to put them down here.
Yeah.
Can you identify those for the record?
Yeah, these are the 5-gallon cans that were found up to the scene. One of them was practically full, the other one just had about a gallon left in it. And my recollection, I'll clear it up right now for you, I'm not clear.
Do you want to pick each one up if you're gesturing to it so the camera can get it?
One didn't have any cover on it on the corner of my notes, I remembered it didn't. Whether I added this before I transported it, and there was that cover, or I called it this one, I don't know. I just can't recall. But there was one can with only a gallon in it, and I could find the cover to it. And the other one was practically full and covered. And I took them over to Augusta the same way. And these tags I put on.
Okay. Were these the cans that were found on the 18th, the first night you were there?
That's correct. They were sitting there, and And I was on my way up here with that, and that, yeah, I knew there was gasoline smelling of it, and I didn't want to transport them, obviously, and I asked Norman to take care of them until I get back.
Okay, and then when did you pick them up?
That same night on the way back at his house.
Okay, and except for the fact that one of these cans did not have a cover,
Yeah.
are they now substantially, and the fact that they're now empty,
They're empty, I made sure of that.
right? Are they substantially as they were in 1981?
Except for age and rust, they were quite new looking at the time.
Okay. Now, have they been in your possession ever since?
They've been in my custody. My barn isn't locked, but they've been stored out there.
Okay. So have they been in your custody since the time you got them from Norman Herron?
That's right, from the time I picked, no, now, I took them to Augusta, and I was there for the fingerprint. In fact, I think even now you can see some of the old black smut they put on them.
Okay, which exhibit are you talking about? Which number?
Black?
Which number has the black smut?
Well, that's number 1, and
15 or
this is
16?
number 2. I don't see it on this one, but the one that had been used was probably the one they checked for, the full one.
Okay, this number 15, you
Oh,
were
I got your number, my number, yeah. Yeah, number 15.
you were present when they fingerprinted?
I was there when they fingerprinted them, and I believe they took samples of the contents out and took it in jars to send down to a chemist. And I believe I took the cans right back the same day. But sometimes they would hold stuff at the lab for a few days and then notify us to pick it up. And without my daily reports, I can't be sure of it. But they either come home with me or I picked them up over Augusta later. But they were over there on the 19th and fingerprinted and the sample taken out of them.
Okay, and you've had them in your barn in Blue Hill ever
They
since?
come back and been in my barn ever since. Yeah.
Okay, now, you were mentioning, going back to where we were before we took the break, we were talking about your investigation on the 24th of February after the body was found, and you